Alors, mon nom est Stefana Broadbent, je suis donc une des membres de l'équipe TESaCo. La session de clôture de cette journée est donc sur l'intelligence collective. Je sais que c'est tard et tout le monde est fatigué, mais on a deux intervenants vraiment très vivaces et très, je pense, qui vont amener des contenus vraiment pertinents. Alors, je vous les introduis. Alex Perlichevskaya, qui a un doctorat en neurosciences depuis Imperial College et principal researcher dans le Centre d'intelligence collective de NEST, qui est une organisation à Londres sur l'innovation sociale. Le Centre d'intelligence collective de NEST a été créé il y a plus de 10 ans. C'est un des centres, je pense, les principaux. Elle va vous en parler brièvement. Mais ce qui est intéressant des travaux d'Alex, c'est que depuis bien avant l'engouement pour l'intelligence artificielle de cette dernière année, elle a essayé de voir comment intégrer justement l'intelligence artificielle et l'intelligence collective. Et aujourd'hui, elle va nous en parler d'une manière aussi bien, disons, de principe, mais aussi avec des projets qu'elle suit, que Nesta Finance, etc. Et Nicolas Nova, anthropologue donc des techniques et, et du numérique, chercheur, est professeur à Genève, à Haute école d'art et de design. Il a aussi fondé, il y a quelques années, peut-être une des agences de design la plus intéressante que je connaisse, qui s'appelait le Near Future Lab, qui travaillait sur la fiction dans le design fiction. Et donc, auteur très prolifique, j'arrive même pas à vous citer la quantité de livres qu'il arrive à écrire tous les ans. Et donc, aujourd'hui, il va nous parler justement d'un thème très proche, c'est-à-dire comment, en fait, en partant des smartphones, comment là aussi, quels vont être les enjeux de l'intelligence artificielle quand on part d'un modèle de cognition distribuée. Si on comprend bien comment les technologies ou les artefacts cognitifs précédents pouvaient augmenter ou en tout cas être soutenus, être partie de notre cognition distribuée, quels sont les enjeux pouvons-nous penser à une répartition équitable aussi avec l'IA. Donc j'ai inversé par rapport au programme, ce que Nicolas va raconter, je pense, porte très bien à ce que Alex va raconter après. Il y a aussi un côté que j'espère qu'Alex va aussi, je sais qu'Alex va présenter, qui a beaucoup à faire avec ce qu'on a discuté aujourd'hui. En fait, elle va nous parler aussi d'une approche au développement de l'IA, une approche participative. Il y a très peu de modèles et très peu de projets existants à ma connaissance où il y a vraiment une approche participative du développement même, et donc elle va en parler. Alors, la session va être en anglais. Nicolas, qui est français, a gentiment accepté aussi de parler en anglais pour permettre aussi à Alex de suivre. Mais évidemment, les questions pourront être faites, le débat pourra être fait en français. Je vais relayer aussi à Alex. Voilà, je te laisse la parole.
All right. So what I wanted to do tonight is to start from the kind of research that I'm doing as an ethnographer, focus on how people use digital technologies, such as the smartphone, and slowly move to how AI systems are more and more common on such devices, and probably craft some kind of argument about what Stefana called distributed cognition, and eventually reach some kind of conclusion about what it means to live with AI systems. So I'm an ethnographer, which means that I'm focused on studying people and how, in my case, how they use certain kind of technologies, such as smartphones. I used to work on video games as well, interested also in internet memes, interested in the intersection between digital culture and environmental issues, which is why I wrote like a book with a colleague about smartphone repair shops. But I'm not going to talk about this thing tonight. I'm going to be talking about, I'm going to be starting from a research project that I've done a few years ago, comparing the way people use smartphones in Geneva, where I live, in Tokyo and in Los Angeles. And I was interested at the time in following it's qualitative research. It means that I haven't done extensive quantitative data collection. I was interested in following people in their everyday life to understand what it means to live with a smartphone and what it means in terms of different topics. And one of them was about understanding how the role that the smartphone plays in terms of cognitive processes, like to memorize things, to pay attention to certain things in the environment, etc., etc. And as I'm going to show in a few minutes, the way it automates somehow certain kind of cognitive processes. And I also interviewed smartphone designers and application designers to see the kind of balance between users' perceptions and designers' perception. And it's probably, compared to what we had at the beginning of the afternoon, this is super low-key and super a sort of bottom-up perspective, because I'm going to start from people's practices that you probably know if you own a smartphone. And basically, I was interested in situations like this, when you have people having, over lunch, someone wants to remember something about, the place, the Greek village where they went on vacation, forgot about it, fish out the smartphone and use Wikipedia or something else to find this information, or look at the photo, the images on the smartphone to, to bring back some kind of memory about what it was. And it's interesting to see how over time the smartphone users, as we are, developed practices not only to memorize stuff, but to externalize somehow things that we want to keep in our pockets somehow, like this guy on the streets in this is San Francisco, talking to his phone to keep some kind of audio notes that he wants to, something that he wants to remember, etc., etc. So there's the sort of equivalent of what we had as a notepad, basically by talking to the phone and using it for many different things. This is pretty basic. This guy trying to look for a certain a model of a car, drawing it out of a search on Google Image. This user, this is probably a bit less common, but I guess you're familiar with that. This guy trying to find what's the music track that is playing in this shop, using Shazam, that you probably know. And this is like where the AI systems comes into play. Things like Shazam or PlantNet, in order to discover and perceive certain kind of plants and their names, or using BirdNet, the equivalent for bird sounds, etc., etc. And it's interesting how this extends to more more elaborate practices. Like I remember this user telling me how he's interested in buying stuff, and he wants to recognize the object that he sees, like a pair of sneakers, using this app called CamFind, which recognizes the object, the sneakers, and brings him to a website so that he could buy these shoes. Although he's male, and it brings him to a woman's athletic shoes, which is not really what he expected. So somehow the smartphone as not just a memory aid, but also as a way to extend somehow perception as a tool. And there are many things like this. I guess you're familiar with this phenomena that some of the users I met call this birthday blues. So when everybody tells you it's your birthday, but it's not because people memorize that. It's just that they have an application like this that tells them it's Danny's birthday. So these are. I don't want to go into much details about that, but this is the kind of quotes from the interviews I ran in different places, where I find it interesting that the metaphor that was used to describe part of what the smartphone is for them is some kind of second brain, which extends from one language to the next, like in Japanese, in French, or in English, as a sort of metaphor that people use to describe the importance of using this kind of a tool in their everyday life. I'm going to skip this, or maybe a word on this. I mean, talking about those sort of usage of the phone as a memory or perception aid is not similar for everyone. There are what we call regimes of different usage in sociology or anthropology. And I mean, some people know how to use such technologies for this kind of purpose, and some others are less keen on using them, although they might know that it's possible. And I'll get back to that later. Probably showing that it's important to keep in mind that we don't have the same kind of usage, and there's some kind of imbalance or some kind of diversity in the way people master or not such technologies. And the project that I presented before was, a few years ago, but I keep on like interviewing people and following them using their smartphone, and I find it interesting to look at the way certain AI systems like ChatGPT, for instance, or applications like which is an app that leads you to different large language models. How those people use such kind of apps to extend their reasoning? Like, for instance, here I saw this user asking ChatGPT to write down some kind of paragraph that defends the idea that politic action is some kind of compromise. It's about like getting some help, not just to memorize things, not just to perceive things, but also to produce some kind of text about the reasoning that, of course, as we will see a bit later, could be, not super accurate, depending on the topics and depending on how the users understand what ChatGPT produces. So this is for the basic part about like what people do with those things, and probably you're familiar with that as smartphone users. What I want to do now is to focus on what it means anthropologically speaking, and as you're probably familiar with this kind of theory and research. What I find interesting in the way those things are used, like smartphone as a way to, some kind of tools, as some kind of substitute to certain kind of cognitive processes, could be traced back to a long genealogy of the way human beings externalize certain kind of tasks. And this was showed by like an anthropologist like André Leroy-Gourand, not just about cognitive processes, but also about our physical force, the way we used to use, our teeth or hands to do certain things, and then tools were a way to do it a bit more efficiently. So it's interesting to see how this kind of prosthetic metaphor that users talked about in the research that I've presented before is also present in the sort of genealogy of human beings and tools as an exteriorization, like externalization of certain kind of process. So this sort of return of the cognitive prosthetic metaphor is quite common when you talk to designers and developers and engineers creating those tools. They all read books like this one, which is sort of one of the Bible for designers, the Design of Everyday Things by Donald Norman, former cognitive psychologist who moved to Apple in the 80s, and then become some kind of like design guru or advocate for studying how people interact with objects so that technology could be redesigned somehow. And in Donald Norman's book, there's like this discourse, all those theory that he took from environmental psychology about the affordance of object, how artifact can afford certain behavior, and how certain things can aid cognition. And that's, not super surprising, of course, but what I find interesting is that there's some kind of chicken and egg situation with devices like computers or smartphone as developers and designers, like thinking about former students of mine who followed that and took that kind of books to the letter. We have to design cognitive aid. We have to design things that would be the follow-up to what paper, pencils, calculators were in the past, and that could help human beings. Of course, with a certain kind of preconceptions about what could be useful or what could be pertinent in terms of usage. And it's not surprising as well that we have such kind of tools, because if you remember the history of computers and cybernetics, I'm thinking here about probably further, not just the cybernetic, but afterwards, how certain kind of researchers would design the tools that we still use nowadays, like the computer mouse, for instance, had this kind of perspective in mind as well. This is Douglas Engelbart, one of the inventor of the computer mouse, among many other things. And he had this research center called a Research Center for Augmenting Human Intellect. So it's not a surprise that we're still using such kind of vocabulary. And it's also interesting to see how there's some kind of co-evolution between us human beings using those tools, being used to a certain kind of devices and tools, and reshaping those tools along the way by having different waves of technologies, creating what Marshall McLuhan called at the time extensions of man, or extensions of humans, human beings, we might say nowadays. And what is also interesting here is the way there's constantly this kind of debate about the pros and cons, or that might be a bit too limited as an opposition, but the advantages or disadvantages of these tools. And every time there's a new wave of technology, I'm not necessarily, Freud hasn't talked about artificial intelligence, but every time there's a new wave of technology, there's this kind of debate about whether it's something that helps or some kind of self-amputation, as Marshall McLuhan used to say. I'm not necessarily in favor of what Nicolas Nova wrote a few years ago with this cover of The Atlantic, but I take that as a sort of symptom of the debate we keep having about such issues. And it's, looking at the history of this kind of cognitive aid, it's interesting to look at evidences or research about the earlier kind of cognitive aids we had. If you remember the debates about pocket calculators, for instance, and the way it should or should not be used in schools. It's something that shows how this is some kind of recurring debate. It does not mean that there's a strict analogy between the debate we had about the pocket calculator and ChatGPT, of course, but there are some similarities that maybe we can discuss afterwards. And this points to what Stefana introduced at the beginning of the session about this notion of distributed cognition. Distributed cognition is, there's also extended mind, which is some kind of different theory, but it's close. It starts from this idea that cognition is not just us as human beings, it's also the environment that we have and that we can use to deploy some kind of reasoning about the world. And this was really nicely described by Edwin Hutchins a few years ago with this book called Cognition in the Wild, in which he looked at how people navigate the environment using different kind of tools. And the cognition is not, I mean, it's not just our brain, it's also the way we perceive the world and some elements in the environment that we can use, like piece of paper or the cognitive aids that I mentioned before. And this is, I mean, of course, at the time, the technology was a bit different. But now we are having like, I mean, it's a moment in the history of technology where we have to rethink the way cognitive system or distributed cognitive system works, because obviously they are different. Like if you take notes on a piece of paper, you put it in your pocket, you have your kind of extended memory in your pocket. But if you take notes on this kind of device, it's not just in your pocket. It's an Apple iPhone, so it means it's on in the data centers that Apple owns. They could analyze this information, do something about it that I'm not sure of. So it means that the cognitive system is distributed way beyond my body, or way beyond my reach, and the way I can master or not a certain infrastructure of technology. And it's also, I mean, the Facebook post on the right also shows that it's a user who had a problem with her phone. She said it died, but she had a way to somehow reconstitute the sort of distributed memory by asking people to send pictures, to send images, screenshots from friends, from family. So it's another form of distribution that is a bit different from the pocket notepad that I mentioned before. And of course, that is, some of the users do not necessarily know about it. Some other users are bothered by this kind of situation. Some knows that something is happening when you take notes on a smartphone, as opposed to taking notes on something that only sits in your hard drive or in your notepad. But if you remember the slides about the different usage regimes, like the way we do not understand, or we do not use those technologies in the same way, we see here that it's, there's an uneven distribution of the way we master such kind of technologies, and the way we have a certain representation about how it works and how it can behave. So it means that this notion of like prosthetic or cognitive prosthetic metaphor is reformulated with the different waves of technologies, with the fact that it's tools. Those tools are, they are owned or they're designed by private companies with different regulations, depending on where you live on this planet. There's an increasing cognitive dimension. It's not just about memory, it's also about perception. It's also about helping you to build some kind of reasoning using ChatGPT, and I would not trust that technology at this point in time. So it's become some kind of computational prosthetic that is increasingly more sophisticated than in the past. So, and this is the last part of the talk. This is also relevant if we look at the evolution of the technologies. And we had like the manual tasks that we human beings somehow delegated to, sometimes to human beings and animals, then to machines. Then it was like repetitive or boring tasks that we delegated to machines. And now it's like reasoning or some kind of decision-making tasks in HR, for instance, or like the examples that I've presented with a former student of mine asking ChatGPT to write a paragraph about political science. So the way this evolution is happening brings this kind of discussion about what it means to interact or to use such cognitive prosthetic. Are there different roles in the way we use AI systems? Are there different complementarities? And here I'm following, there's a very interesting paper by Mustafa Zwiner, an HCI researcher, who wrote about different ways of understanding what it means to collaborate with AI system. And he defines that working with an AI system could be about having this kind of substitution model. I just trust the machine and I let it do the work. There are certain kind of HR system that select resumes and curriculum vitae so that you don't do anything, and that's a model that is quite common, this kind of substitution. Problem is that sometimes you may trust the AI system and you have like big surprises. I mean, every week there's things like this. There was recently Air Canada who let a chatbot based on some kind of GPT system answer questions from their customers, and it led to a big mess because it was obviously offering, well, super interesting things for the customers, but not necessarily for the company. There's also, I mean, it's well documented that the substitution, the automation of certain kind of cognitive processes is problematic also because it leads to some kind of phenomenon about boredom and monotony of tasks. I mean, it's been ages that it's documented in ergonomy and human-computer interaction. If you let the machine do the work and you still have like human supervisors, at some point they might feel bored, or they might, I mean, stop thinking about those things. And this is, I mean, very often underplayed or not really seen as important, but that's a common issue. The second kind of model in terms of how people have built some kind of usage and complementarity with AI system is some kind of augmentation, keeping in mind that it's always like human beings and some kind of AI system or a team of made of AI and humans with, I mean, the human could be a supervisor, it could be a way to, the AI system could extend the sort of repertoire of actions and activities using, I don't know, text generator, image generator, and many other kind of tools. But still, the human user, and I guess if you're familiar with text generator, you know that you have to, I mean, read it several times and probably adjust few things, and probably also write down few lines of text so that it makes the outputs relevant. And it's also about human augmenting AI system by bringing in new data, because the large language model could be trained with a certain kind of bias, and it might be important to, change this large language model and the way it's trained. There could be feedback on the performance of the model. There could be different learning strategies. And of course, this is, I mean, if you use ChatGPT 3.5, this does not happen. But if you use other kind of models, which are way more complex and which requires more, know-how and skills, you know that it's possible, but it's not always easy. The problem in such kind of context is that there's still, risks. The risk of control. If you look at patents about large language models or AI system, you realize that some of them have certain behavior or certain bias or preconceptions about the way they should work and behave. And probably at some point we might have like large language models that you can use for free, but there would be advertisement, or the way the data they've been trained with could be limited. So this is not, this is really a potential problem. And one other model that we have to keep in mind, if we look at the way we collaborate with AI system, is understanding that there are humans everywhere in this kind of system. As if, if you look at, for instance, this is a very basic representation of a machine learning process or systems. There are plenty of human activities around it. Like you have human persons like producing data, like photos, for instance, on Instagram, or texts that exist online or that exist as published by companies. if you remember, I don't know if you've seen, but I saw that Meta wants to buy Simon & Schuster, the American publishing company, not because they want to publish books, but they just want data to train their large language models. So those texts have been produced by human beings. Human beings can also repair, verify. I mean, there's plenty of work. I'm thinking about the work by Antonio Casilli, for instance, about the way you have like human everywhere in this kind of system. And also, I mean, if you remember the chess player from like a long time ago, that is this sort of super good chess playing machine in which you had a human in it. This still serves as the kind of inspiration for what's called artificial intelligence, like, for instance, Amazon Mechanical Turk, and such kind of platforms where you have human users performing tasks that could have been done by AI systems. I've seen recently a company, I don't remember the name right now, but it's an AI system that can delegate tasks to human beings so that it can do them for a small amount of money. So there's, I mean, my point here is that it's not just like you have machines which are autonomous. There's a really strong presence of human beings here and there. And of course, it leads to certain kind of questions about the way this kind of, those human users or human contributors to AI systems, where they are they paid well, or in general they're not, and they work from the global south. What I found also important, and I'm reaching the end of the talk, is this sort of an uneven distribution of the know-how and the skills to master, information technologies and artificial intelligence system. This term, I don't know how it would be called in English, electronism, but it's about like probably digital illiteracy, or the difficulty people have in general, not like all the population, but part of the population has trouble understanding the logic of computers, information technologies, and it's even worse with AI system. And sometimes when I see the way some decision makers attribute a certain amount of trust to something like ChatGPT, I'm kind of worried and kind of worried as well about such kind of risk. Because as Andy Clark, the philosopher, talking about extended mind, as Andy Clark pointed out, a long time ago, every time you have this kind of delegation of cognitive functions to technology, it corresponds to some kind of social inequality. So it might be tricky to build too much trust in those systems, which doesn't mean that we should not use them, but it means that we need to be careful about what it means. Also because illegal and semi-legal kind of activities flourish with such kind of technologies. You have problems with Spotify, with people creating fake. It's not fake. It's music, but no one is listening to those music tracks. But it's a way to for certain developers to make a small amount of money. But if you program a system to listen to those tracks, you can create some kind of feedback loop where you can get a lot of money by having generated sounds and some kind of system that pretends it's a human being listening to those things. So, quick conclusion. So we're having this kind of substitution of certain kind of cognitive processes with certain kind of tools, and it's increasingly moving from what we had in the past, like for instance memory, or probably using calculators, for instance, to something that is more sophisticated cognitively speaking. So that's, of course, that's surprising. That could be fascinating. The way, GPT-4 or Perplexity works, producing text based on certain kind of sources. It's certainly fascinating. It's certainly playing a role that could be relevant. But it begs the question about what it means to master those things and to keep them in certain to keep them to be in control of those things in a situation where it's a distributed cognitive system, in which large portion of this technical system is not in our hands. It's not under the same kind of regulation as a pocketbook, for instance. And of course, the ecological argument is important here as well, because this relies on, a certain amount of electricity that we have to consider. That's it. I'm going to stop here.